Hello, my name is Adon Ayala, and today I am discussing my case study over Purdue Pharma. So, Purdue Pharma is basically a company that controls medicine. Specifically, they're notorious for their production and distribution of OxyContin, also known as oxycodone. And, well, they are a big hand in contributing to the opioids epidemic. And that, as you know, is a very terribly and sad event that still continues to today. But Purdue Pharma specifically has had a large hand in causing this opioids epidemic through its pretty much unethical and borderline criminal actions. And, well, Purdue Pharma used to be owned by the Sackler family, which you probably heard on news and outlets on how they've been, expelled from the Purdue Pharma company, since throughout their history they had contributed heavily through pretty evil actions in the opioids industry, also known as Big Pharma through media. And their tactics throughout the history included stuff like advertisements, falsification of documents, specifically the documents that went hand in hand with the experimentation and testing of oxycodone. And these bioethical negatives that they've done have included falsifying the advertisements that you would see on TV that they used to air back in the early 2000s and 90s when oxycodone used to be produced. And that is a very terrible thing that they did, lying to the public and such. And not only did they do that, but they adamantly referred to a document that they published themselves to test the efficacy and safety of oxycodone. And that particular study was cited a lot, but it was flawed because, the OxyContin itself was really only tested on patients that had been hospitalized. But Purdue Pharma was adamant that that study was true. And so that tactic was another terrible, unethical thing. Moving forward, the Purdue Pharma also conducted in certain acts of bribery scandals, usually on doctors that were prescribing this medication. And that is not really what the doctor's supposed to do, take bribes and sell medication just because they'll make money. But that resulted in a few patients getting addicted and having the doctor as his seller. And some were caught and charged, but I'm pretty sure, or it could be inferred, that many were not seriously facing repercussions. And really, Purdue Pharma was going for profit, so they were pushing that pill to be sold for all purposes, like pain in particular. And as for government oversight, the FDA was really not. Well, the FDA would perform these assessments to test the safety of OxyContin, and while those were passed, they probably failed to look into the effects of OxyContin as a whole, that it would grow so large as it is, as it was back in the height of its usage. And due to that mishandling of it, many people proceeded to overdose and die. And that could have been prevented if the FDA had intervened more earlier than it did. So, what are the wider implications of this? Well, for one thing, the Sacklers were sacked out of Purdue Pharma. Probably not gonna be like jail time much for most of these bad actors in the industry, but Purdue's not really the only one that did such terrible things like you see on the web or TV with like Johnson & Johnson and all the stuff. But for Purdue Pharma in particular, it got into a lot of legal proceedings and verdicts, tons of money paid out, but that won't replace the people who died or are still recovering from the sale of drugs and such. And there's been more legislation passed, rules passed, looking at these big pharma and drug industry. And a lot of people now are more hesitant to trust these drugs. I mean, you see the ads on TV of like them pushing all that, and you hear all that negative stuff at the end. So why would you really want to try it unless you like actually need it? But skepticism has been a large result of all this. And there's kind of been like in the aftermath, there's been like a distrusting of any type of like medicine. So yeah, that's pretty much it.